Hey guys, this is Noxylence. I'd like to go on record and say I do not like the MCU's version of Spider-Man.
Boo this man!
Yeah, boo me all you want, that's not gonna change the way I feel. I didn't really like him in Civil War, but that was due to a bias I had against Tom Holland due to him replacing Andrew Garfield. So when Spider-Man Homecoming was announced, I decided to give the MCU Spidey another chance and watch the movie once it came out. However, once I had a chance to watch Homecoming, I didn't really like it, and I didn't form an attachment to that version of Peter like I did with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's version of him. I didn't understand why I felt that way, nor did I put too much thought into why. I figured since I didn't enjoy it, I might as well not put too much thought into the movie and move on. But then I went to see Far From Home 2 years later and thought it was just as bad. And then 2 years after that, I went to see No Way Home and I thought it was worse than the last two movies. It boggled my mind why I didn't like those movies considering how big of a Spider-Man fan I was and still am. But again, I didn't put too much thought into why because I didn't want to dwell on movies I found bad. However, after watching Across the Spider-Verse, a light bulb went off in my head. I thought it'd be a pretty cool idea to rewatch the Home trilogy, find out the reason why I didn't like it, and then talk about it on my channel. So after a few hours of trying to stay awake and regretting my life choices, it finally hit me. The reason why I hate the MCU version of Spider-Man is because these films barely understand the appeal behind the character, No Way Home especially. But before I explain why, I want to give a quick disclaimer. If you happen to like the MCU version of Spider-Man, then that's fine. This isn't me trying to criticize the fans, it's more so me trying to criticize the movie and the character portrayal. Now with that out of the way, let's begin. So one of the things that makes Spider-Man so appealing as a character is that he's a street-level superhero. He doesn't save the world on a day-to-day basis, nor is his roster of villains as powerful or threatening as Loki and Ultron. Most of the time, he does things like helping kids who are being bullied and takes down threats to a city like Kingpin or Green Goblin. That's why some of the best and most memorable adaptations of Spider-Man are when he lives up to his title of being a friendly neighborhood superhero. This is where my first gripe of MCU Spider-Man comes to play. Now I will admit, upon rewatch, Spider-Man Homecoming does have that element of Peter being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Well, at least in comparison to the other MCU movies he appears in. However, in all his other appearances in the MCU, they have Spider-Man be neither friendly nor neighborly. Wait, I messed up the wording on that. Can I take a second to try that again? In all his other appearances in the MCU, he's not this friendly neighborhood street-level hero who people can relate to. He's just a kid with spider powers that got lucky and caught the eye of some really important people. In Captain America Civil War, his first appearance in the MCU, he's helping Iron Man fight Captain America in an all-out civil war against other superheroes. In Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, he's helping the Avengers fight against Thanos to try and save the universe. In Spider-Man Far From Home, he's helping S.H.I.E.L.D. deal with a threat that they think could destroy the world. And in Spider-Man No Way Home, he saves the multiverse from getting torn apart. Are you kidding me with this? This is the kind of stuff you should have planned for years later down the line, when you establish Spider-Man in his own set of movies and have him little by little meet some of the Avengers. Not making 99% of his appearance in the MCU, especially when you're taking a character who appeals to so many people because he's a down-to-earth street-level superhero. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Let me tell you another one of the issues I have with how they characterize Spider-Man. So you know when the MCU started out, each hero had their own solo movie that had them go on their own journey, learn what it meant to be a hero, and if we were lucky, we would get to see a cameo from other characters in the MCU. Yeah, well, Spider-Man never had the chance to do any of that. Like I said earlier, in Civil War, his debut into the MCU, he's recruited by Iron Man to fight alongside him in a civil war against other Avengers. And you know, I probably wouldn't have a problem with that if in Homecoming he'd had his own personal journey of discovering what being Spider-Man meant to him and how he wanted to go about being a hero moving forward. Like Black Panther, for example. He also debuted into the MCU during Civil War and also fought alongside Tony. Even though his first appearance was tied around other Marvel superheroes, Black Panther had his solo movie that had him doing his own thing without any other superheroes in sight. Spider-Man never had that. He was never given the chance to be his own hero and have his own journey of self-discovery. Homecoming had Iron Man be part of the plot. Far From Home had Nick Fury, who while not a superhero is an integral character in the MCU, be part of its plot. And No Way Home had Doctor Strange, another MCU superhero, be part of its plot. Do you see the pattern here? Since the beginning, Spider-Man was always tied down by the other characters in the MCU. And you know what's the worst part? They made him into this superpowered superfan of the Avengers that wants to prove himself to them while also making him into Iron Man's apprentice. Do you know how messed up that is? Especially when Peter already has this great origin of him being given his powers and tackling the incredible responsibility that comes with having them. He was already his own hero until he was brought into the MCU to be what Kamala Khan already is. A fan of superheroes who was lucky enough to get powers and become one. What a great disservice to an already outstanding character. Oh, and back to the topic of his origin story, let's talk about how the MCU completely botched that as well, shall we? I'd be surprised if anyone watching this video didn't know what the origins of Spider-Man was, but for the very small minority who actually don't, I'll give you a quick summary. A high school student named Peter Parker was bitten by a radioactive spider during a school trip to a science lab, which caused him to get the powers of a spider. With his newfound powers, Peter decided to do pro wrestling so that he can earn some cash. After winning a match and going to collect his reward, the promoter for the wrestling match cheats Peter out of money, so when he sees someone stealing money from the promoter and has a chance to stop them, he doesn't, and instead lets the thief escape. However, this turns out to be the worst mistake of his life because Peter later finds out that the thief he let get away killed his Uncle Ben. Peter is struck with guilt and grief over having had the ability to stop the man who killed his uncle, but choosing not to in order to spite the wrestling promoter. Deciding to live by the last piece of advice his uncle gave him, that with great power comes great responsibility, Peter decides to become a hero for New York, going by the name of Spider-Man. Isn't that a great origin story for a superhero? A flawed person learning to accept the responsibility that comes with his powers after the father figure he loved died because he did nothing with them. Sure, it's sad, but it's incredibly well written and it definitely grabs people's attention. Too bad they completely threw out that amazing story in the MCU.
What? What the f?
The MCU never really shows you Peter's origin before Tony recruited him, but it does tell you bits and pieces of what happened, and some of those bits and pieces actually match the original origin of Spider-Man. Peter got bit by a radioactive spider and became Spider-Man, and that's pretty much where the comparison ends. There's no mention of Uncle Ben or the wrestling match. Once Peter gets his powers, he goes out there and saves people because he feels that he has a great power that comes with great responsibility.
Look, when you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you.
And had I not seen No Way Home, I would have just thought that he felt that way because he had his origin of losing Uncle Ben off screen due to there being 2 other Spider-Man films that came out within the past 20 years that already showed that story. Especially since Far From Home had an Easter egg put in the movie proving that Uncle Ben did exist. However, I did see No Way Home and it immediately disproved my theory. In that movie, they have Peter's Aunt May be the one to tell him that with great power comes great responsibility because he feels overwhelmed by a decision that he made that led to major consequences. And that decision eventually cost Aunt May her life.
You serious?
Between all 3 of my issues with MCU Spidey, this is the one that I have the most problems with. They took a character that was fundamentally flawed, who learned to use his powers for the greater good, and made him a character who already felt the need to use his powers responsibly, but had to have someone remind him of that because his anxiety was getting the better of him. And on top of that, they got rid of his uncle, the reason he chose to be Spider-Man in the first place in previous iterations, and made him so insignificant to Peter's story that the only way that we know he exists in the MCU is through an Easter egg that almost anyone can miss. This is why I hate the MCU's version of Spider-Man. They completely butchered his character even though they already had the blueprints to write and plan out his movies. Anyways, that about wraps up all my grievances with this version of Spider-Man. Like I said earlier in the video, if you like this version of Spider-Man, then that's fine. I'm glad you were able to get enjoyment out of watching his movies when I couldn't. I just feel like it's easy to understand the appeal of the character, so the fact that they ignored all of that to make their own bastardized version of him makes me feel incredibly frustrated. Especially when Insomniac Games created one of the best interpretations of Spider-Man. You're telling me a video game studio knows how to write and portray Spider-Man better than professional movie writers and directors?
That don't make no sense.
With all that being said, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video and want to show support, like, comment, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter and Odyssey. Have a good night, guys, and until next time, lights out.